I'm Shireen with Olive Street Designs, and this is my childhood hope chest. I haven't seen it in 35 years or so. My dad's been storing it for me, and he recently passed, so I went and picked it up. It's been stored in a garage on concrete. It's got lots of scratches, piles of dust, but the base is literally crumbling. I think just from sitting on concrete for so many years, the moisture from the concrete has caused this particle board to just disintegrate. It's just chunks completely missing. But we're about to change that because that is the only particle board on this entire thing. Everything else is solid wood. So I cleaned everything thoroughly, and now we need to look inside this time capsule. So when I was a teenager, I did a lot of sewing. So these are seam tape. I've got pin cushion. I found in here lots of things like knitting needles, pins, crochet hook. It really brought back a lot of memories to things that I used to do a lot as a teenager. I was not one of those wild teenagers. I did a lot of sewing and knitting and things, and riding horses and playing sports. So those were my activities. I did quilting, just a practice square of something that I did. And then I did find this entire bag full of, I made an entire quilt, but apparently I made like 4 times the amount of squares that I needed. So I have a whole bag full of them still. I could make a couple more quilts. It's so interesting to see things like this because I had forgotten any of that was in there. I played fast pitch softball all through childhood and high school. So it's interesting to find a glove in there. And then the other interesting thing, this says wedding bouquet. So open that up and find this is wedding bouquet. It's all dried out and crusty, about like that first marriage. So that's gonna go in the garbage. I don't know why we used to keep things like this that were perishable, but anyway, there it is. Okay, let's get down to business here. Now I've got this all cleaned out, ready to go. This has been so well preserved. The original tag is still on it, but I definitely have to start addressing the base. That's the first thing that needs to go. You'll see everything under there is solid wood except for that, just the feet. So I spent some time just getting all of the screws removed, and then just grabbed my hammer and I'm just taking that thing off of there. This one needed a little more help. There were a couple of screws that were just hard to access, so I couldn't really get them off of there, so I just pried it off. It's funny that once you get these parts off that are just crumbling and old, it's like you get a whole fresh start. Okay, I also don't like these details. I think, back in the day, these were made to look like drawers, but I want this to just be a chest. So I'm removing the details I don't want. I also took off the hardware. No need for it. I don't want these to look like fake drawers. Going in with 120 grit sandpaper, and now just smoothing out all these areas that had the details so that they no longer show at all. I'm going to paint this. And the front of this is pine, although the inside, of course, is all cedar lined. So pine is a soft wood and has tons of knots and then dents and dings and everything. So I'm mixing up some Bondo, or J.B. Weld's version of Bondo, and I'm going to fill in those holes that are there from the hardware that had been. And then I also put some Bondo in some of those knots just to get rid of the cracks and things that are in knots. Got to build a new base, so I made a field trip to Home Depot. Boards are $3.24 a square foot, or linear foot for this type. I ended up going with a beautiful maple, but it was so difficult to just find boards that were straight. they're all bowed and crooked, and I had to go through quite a few, but successfully found quite a few. So I've got boards for a skirt and then others for the actual legs. Just taking some measurements, doing some math. Got to figure out what my cuts need to be. Cutting the legs, cutting the skirt. And getting ready for assembly. So I like to dry fit everything first, and then I'm just drawing on it to make sure I know where I'm attaching and drilling all these pocket holes, since I had a lot of them to do. I didn't want to do them the wrong direction. Now's a good time to sand everything and then assemble it. And again, just fitting it on there, making sure everything's going to fit well. And I think that's going to look exactly how I envisioned it. All I'll need to do now is just attach the base to the bottom of the cabinet once I'm ready, but I'm not ready, so I'm just going to set this over here for a bit. Time to get back to the chest. Again, tons of dents and dings and seams and things that needed to have wood filler. So I went a little crazy. I felt like I was a kindergartner again and doing some finger painting with wood filler. Sanding all that down, getting everything smooth. I taped off the back. I don't want any overspray on there. And into my Wagner tent I go. Primer. This is a gray tinted sticks primer. And I get lots of questions about the tent. It's a Wagner large spray tent. Okay, sanding. I always sand in between coats. So important, especially after the primer. This will help to give you a nice smooth finish. So sanded everything. I did dust everything off and clean it again, and now it's time to paint. This is Organic White by Farmhouse Evolution, a beautiful creamy white. Because this is going to go in my house, I had to make it something that would fit my aesthetic. I have a lot of white furniture. Okay, that was, I did paint and then I did top coat, and now it is time to address the base and stain everything. I always use pre-stain conditioner. It just helps the stain go on more evenly. And you'll see that this stain is clear, and then I'm using whole wheat stain both by Salmon, and I've diluted this 50%. So 50% stain, 50% clear, because I didn't want this to be dark. I want this to look like driftwood, maybe, is kind of the color. So just diluting it 50% helps it to go on more sheer. So once that dried, I did a really light sanding and now going in with some top coat. So I did several coats of top coat, and that base is all ready to go. I'll install it in a bit. But one final cleaning for everything inside. It's been a lot of years sitting there with dust in it. And then I decided to go in with Howard's Feed and Wax. I'm not sure if you're supposed to do this to cedar or not, but it was just so dry and everything that I just decided to do it. I guess I'll find out if that was a good thing or not, but it turned out beautifully. Just felt like it needed a little something. I'm so excited by how this is turning out. Time to attach the base. So I put it on a very soft blanket since that's new paint, and I'm attaching the ends. When I got to the center portion, it was bowed a little bit, and I used a long clamp to pull in the center to make it line up properly. Some felt for the feet, and let's take a quick look back at where this started and where it is now. I love how it turned out. I'm so happy I get to keep this piece from my childhood, and I hope this makeover would make my dad proud. Thanks for following.